summits. We're being gender equal by using the word GC, Guider of Ceremonies, and welcome to the 5th Gender Equality Summit 2022 and Target 2030 towards a gender responsive climate commitment. Now, we've got a fantastic session lined up. We had a brilliant session this morning, and I'm sure the energy is going to be just the same in this session. And this is our plenary. This is our 3rd plenary of the 2-day conference, where we're championing diversity and inclusion through ESG, accelerated action targeting the SDGs for 2030. And I think all of you who are here know, and certainly our speakers do, that there's huge evidence to show that investments that prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion augment financial benefits, and sustainable businesses nowadays have to account for this. And DEI is very much a fundamental part of most ESG strategies. So I would like to welcome Siddharth Vazer, who's here with us and is going to be moderating this session. Siddharth, it's really good to see you. Just to give you a very bit, a small brief on Siddharth, and then I'll introduce the names of the speakers, but I'll leave Siddharth to go into a bit more detail should he have the time and want to do that. But otherwise, their details are on the website. Currently in its 4th season, Siddharth hosts the CEO's Chair talk show, where he's interacted with over 49 global CEOs on their eventful journeys. Over the past 2 years, they've amassed almost 1 million social media views. Congratulations, Siddharth, that's fantastic. And over 2.8 million minutes of total watch time. He's the founder and CEO at Bearing Strategy LLP, which operates at the high stakes intersection of business and media. And he has got the most amazing panel with him today. We have Anne Rosenberg, who is the Senior Vice President at Sustainability Solution. And she's also an advisor and a board member and author. She's the co-founder of SDG Ambition, and she's a TEDx speaker. So welcome, Anne. We have Namrata Gill Tyagi, who's the Vice President of HR at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. It's great to have you here with us too. We've got Akanksha Sharma, who's the Global Head of ESG, Social Impact, Sustainability, Governance and Policy at Sterlite Technologies. And we've got Rachna Panda, who's the VP and Country Head Communications, Public Affairs and Sustainability South Asia for Bayer. And you will have seen the partner video that happened just before we came on. So again, Rachna, thank you for all the support that you and the Bayer team give, along with the others. Siddharth, I'm not going to take any more of your time. Over to you. Looking forward to a fabulous discussion.
Thank you so much, Vandana, for such a warm welcome and for such a great introduction as well. I think everybody's familiar now with the panelists, and with all your permission, I'd just like to get started. But before we do, just a quick thank you to the entire Global Compact Network Team India for doing such a stellar job of putting it all together. I know things are difficult enough without having to do a program like this virtually. So to pull it off, with such short notice is very commendable. So great work. And with your permission, I'd like to get started with the first question for you. And if any of the other panelists have any thoughts that they'd like to add on once Anne finishes, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So the first question for you, Anne, is that in your experience as a tech advisor and board member, what efforts are currently being made by tech businesses to accelerate and improve D&I policy and practices and integrate it with their ESG goals?
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this event here today. So we see a lot of improvements. And there's one thing I would like to address that I am heavily involved with is when we look at correlation between the different improvement that we work on the ESGs. So within both the tech sector, but also across the different sectors, we are trying right now to make sure, like when we work with climates, do we see intersections between improvement in the journey to become net zero at the same time that we actually improve D&I? So example, if you take the energy sector, today we see that across all industries, there is executive roles by women is around 22%. If you go into the energy sector, it's around 20%. If you split that up between fossil fuel companies and renewables, you see that the fossil fuel is around 17%, and you see the renewable is around 20%. And this is here where we need to make sure when we go in and digitalize the energy sector, and we do this huge journey that we all are working on towards to become 1.5 science-based targets, that when we improve, that we do put the D&I into this focus of change that we're doing. So I would like to say to all the people listening in is that when we work on improvement, for example, in the whole sector of renewable, no matter what industry you're in, make sure you get the D&I improvement at the same time. So I would like to mention that.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne. And I know it's never easy being the first one to get started, but you did a great job with that answer. So that's so well done. Namrata, coming to you. I know that gender equality and climate change are usually not two topics that we talk in the same sentence. But in your opinion, what are the challenges that are still faced by corporates in advancing the DE&I strategy and the agenda?
So I think, thank you for asking this question. I think it's a great question. I think the first thing that I would say is that organizers should recognize the shift in D&I in global understanding, and especially with respect to D&I. Diversity to everybody really means about race and gender. There's a lot of growing significance on diversity placed on environments where different voices are heard, different voices are listened to. Multiple organizations also do not understand how to value differences, right? People are inherently different, and how to value contrarian opinions. I think evolving organization must work diversity in race, religion, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, etc. Make sure that your key influential employees are aligned to the transformation that you are taking. The second point is about linking diversity with tangible business outcome. I was recently going through a BCG study, and it found out that companies with more diverse management team have 19% higher revenues due to innovation. So therefore, in tech companies, in startups and industries where innovation is key to growth, we need to have this more diverse manpower. The third challenge is actually about lack of ownership and buy-in from the senior most management. Ensure that your leaders are actual role models and agents of change. When a senior leader role models D&I and makes them a part of the whole process, it sets the tone for the rest of the organization to follow. Growing organizations are making sure now that D&I metrics are actually embedded in the scorecards and the KPIs, of course. Then the next one is few organizations just want to focus on bringing diversity and not building an inclusive environment. So just because you're bringing more diverse talent doesn't mean automatically your environment becomes inclusive. So I think first we need to get the organization ready. The policies, the practices, the value systems, the beliefs, everything needs to change. The equitable employment practices, that the integration of differences and the inclusion of all the key decision makers. We need to have fair policies. We need to have commitment from employees, etc. The last one is we don't have enough sensitizations and trainings for people. We have them at certain level, but not enough. I think it's ever evolving. The meaning is ever changing. The way diversity is being defined and being perceived is ever changing. So we should not limit ourselves to one-time solution in a year that we have done a lip service. Training, sensitization on biases, on human behaviors, on hiring behaviors, on understanding and respecting diversity, all should form a bigger ecosystem of it. So these were the 5 main points that I thought I should mention to you. Was I too long? No.
No. You you were just right, Namrata. Thank you. And leading from the front and having diverse teams is just never enough. And like you said, change is never easy, whether it's in an organization or out of it.
Sure.
Akansha, coming to you, what role would you say that gender-based assumptions and gender inequitable laws and regulations play? Have you seen these shape the ESG agenda with your experience?
Thank you, Siddharth, and glad to be here. Firstly, thank you, UNGC India team, for having me. I think when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we need to also talk about access to opportunities and participation in decision making, leading to better engagement. So purely from an ESG lens, the S part of ESG, which includes social and diversity and inclusion from all aspects. I think it's really strategic to integrate this as at every aspect of an organization, which is truly complex. But from a context setting perspective, I think the pandemic has been a great leveler to some extent. We have seen more focus from the investor side on promoting minority-owned enterprises. That also includes women-owned enterprises. There's been a greater focus on including diversity in the decision-making forums, especially at the boardrooms. More from creating a more compassionate and an empathetic decision, which is itself a very inclusive way to look at the impact. But I think, having said all of this, there are unintended biases that we all have seen in our surroundings, which are related to regulations, law, and customs. And I think, more gender neutral job description, if I talk about purely at the workplace environment, or looking at more tactical interventions, which can lead to more women participation, would really help. But then it is also about individual families and societies where we need to really start with. So this is what I wanted to add. I'll pause here to engage more in discussions.
Absolutely, Akansha. And I think that's a great point that you brought up about having gender neutral job descriptions, because it's such a simple thing that we take for granted, but we still, to this day, and it's 2022 and we're still talking about it, but we still see that, female receptionist wanted, or we have a specific male sales role that is advertised for. And I think it is the responsibility of the organizations, and like Namrata ma'am also said, it starts at the very top. Rachana, thank you so much for your patience. And last but definitely very not least, in your opinion, are current regulatory measures or institutional mandates adequate to address gender inequality and climate action?
Thanks for having me, Siddharth, and a great question. So first of all, I think in terms of regulations, I see there's a good movement. Good, we move the needle well, whether it is the maternity amendment to the Maternity Act or the POSH, or even having women on boards, right? And coming just to the gender part of it. I think we've made a good start, but I guess in terms of implementation, in terms of execution, I think we have a long way to go, right? So 2-3 things that I would want to call out is one, D&I should be a part of the corporate strategy and needs to be measured, needs to be incentivized in terms of having it as goals for the leaders or the managers. Otherwise, it is very difficult to do it as a part of good to do. It has to be a must to do, right? So that's one. Second, in terms of diversity, companies like Bayer, I think we have very stringent guidelines around it. And promises made, which means that we are measuring everything that their target is, and every manager, every leader has to align with it, right? So that's an interesting part. The most important part is incentivize the leaders. The bonuses or the incentive part of it is linked to the SDG targets, and in this case, the D&I part, which is also, when it comes to age, we operate in 154 countries and having diverse people from all across the world. Second, how do we include specially challenged people in the entire discussion is something that we need to be focused. And I think regulations on that part, particularly in India, I think we have a long way to go. We haven't really moved too much there. But on the gender side, I guess we've done very well. Third is on the climate action. You're talking about climate action. There again, I think making it as a part of the strategy, corporate strategy, is something that really will add on to the accountability, right? We've talked about 100 million, reaching 100 million farmers all across the world by a certain date, right? Including women, 100 million women in self-care is in low and medium income groups. This is another target that we are measuring. And that's the important part, is we need to measure what we do. And I think a lot of companies started doing it. Regulations are in the right place, but have to move in the right direction in terms of implementation.
Excellent, Rachna. And I couldn't agree with you more, because there's multiple points that you pointed out. And I'll take the question over to Anne, and maybe she can continue as well. Anne, in your experience, have you seen any corporate organizations that have made the D&I metric as part of the quarterly report and as a deliverable for their top management? And if yes, how does it play out?
First of all, I think we are seeing a lot of improvement. We are seeing, just like the commitment the company have around climate, we are seeing the same thing around D&I. So it's becoming part of their core ambitions. So I think things are improving. I know there's a long way to go, absolutely. And I want to come up with an example which is linked to, it was touched on when we talk about entrepreneurship and female founders. So I work together with TIGLIF, the Shiv Kimkins, the foundation TIGLIF, where we are running a huge institute called ESG Entrepreneurship as a Sport, which is the World To-Do List Accelerator. You all know the World To-Do List, which is a huge campaign with Project Everyone and UN. And within here, when we see female founders, female entrepreneurs working on solutions for the 17 global goals, and here we had 300,000 entrepreneurs in 2020, and in 2021 we had more than 600 entrepreneurs going in and competing around solutions for the 17 global goals. Here we saw that the best access solutions and the people who went to the finals, more than 50% of them were women. And in 2020, we had some amazing companies like Trescon. It was actually a female founder out of India. We had Pangaya, and we also had Traders of Africa. And this year, again, 2021, again, we had 4 female founders within different areas within health and future foods, and it was all led by women. So I think that what is really crucial for me when we talk about getting it right on D&I and getting it right when we are working on solutions for the 17 global goals, which will shape the future for all of us, that we get women in. Of course, we have existing companies where we need to go in and work on D&I and make sure when they transform to become more sustainable companies that they get the D&I right. But what is also important is that when we now have new companies coming, that it's actually female founders, as I see it, are definitely leading the way in new businesses. And that's why I'm excited to announce today, together with UN Global Compact India, the female track in ESG with the World To-Do List, that we do focus on the women, the female founders going forward, who are building solutions within sustainability.
Excellent, Anne. And talking about real life solutions, I know that one of the stumbling blocks that female founders often face is the lack of interest that VCs or investors show to them. And I think that's a huge area of focus that all of us can possibly have, that if you're looking at funding startups or if you're looking at angel investing, we probably make it a mandate, or we probably make sure that we insist on having at least a female co-founder as part of the founding team. I think that'll go a long way in pushing a lot of these agendas forward. Yeah. Sorry, Anne, did you want to add on something?
Yeah, I will say that this is something that we are beginning to see, that for investors, that it is becoming a requirement. but I think what is most important for me to see, because we, with the ESG, the World To-Do List Accelerator, that when we go through 600,000 startups, that we actually see some of the best startup ideas within creating solution within sustainability actually is coming from women. So I think that in itself is a great example, and then it is up to us to make sure that we support it, so we can get it right. It's more or less like getting it right from the beginning, not go and fix it afterwards, right? So it's good to see that evolution. Yeah.
No, and you couldn't have hit the nail on the head better, because you've got such a great community with the UN Global Compact Network. So anytime that you just need to ask for help, or even just tell somebody that, listen, this is an area that I need some help in, and I'm sure everybody will rally around. Namrata, talking about real life solutions as well, you're on the panel representing Dr. Reddy's. Can you talk to us about any practices or best practices that you've seen or you've experienced or that you've launched that the other firms can also inculcate and learn from?
Actually, before I start, I wanted to say Anne made a very significant point, and I really agree with her most of the points, even the real life instances that she was sharing. I think the first one that I want to talk about is providing, the first is providing safe and wide-ranging policies for employees. When I say support structure, it can't be limited to just giving jobs, trainings, etc. We need to embed the entire culture and the entire vision in our system so that it becomes a part of our regular life. One of the key initiatives that we started for DNI was a systematic practice called Enabling You, which is a handbook of policies and manuals actually that have diversity and everyone, and internal practices which you can claim. These policies start from something as rudimentary as maternity leave, given extra pay for 2-3 months, then extended maternity leave, then coming back, welcoming to back to work policy where you give part-time working and dial down on the working hours, to adoption, parent care leaves, we have bereavement leaves, we have looking after sick people at home, so reduced work hours, flexi time. I think our insurance, as in many companies, is open to all kind of partners, irrespective of your gender, irrespective of your orientation. The diversity referral bonuses that we have, but that most of the companies have these days. I think we modulated all our policies and the languages that we were using, and that's alluding to the point made earlier, toward gender neutral to become an equal opportunity employer. And all touch points of employee life cycle is neutral to any bias and discrimination. The way it's worded, the way it's written, we actually had to go to a lot of it. We've been recognized by the UN, but we also the first Indian company to win the Bloomberg Gender Equity Award. It was the first Indian company, and we were the first for many years. I think we won it for 5 years in a row. So and they have a host of parameters, including parity in pay, including parity in growth. So there's huge amount of data crunching that we need to do for Bloomberg, and of course UN WEP award, of course. And we are the only Indian pharma company, and for ages we were one of the only companies in Asia. We're the first companies in Asia. I think analysis and reporting of all parameters, we actually give us real-time scenarios. So I remember when I talk to the board, I have to report diversity. I have to talk about diversity. I have to talk about report to the board. And every time the bar gets higher and higher each time. So many organizations have well-regulated diversity scorecard, which is cascaded to all the functions till the lowest level here for us. And I was reading the Bloomberg Diversity Gender Equality Report. 28% of the organizations still don't have a chief diversity officer, according to the report that we were talking about. We have also a lot of audit going on in general on diversity and inclusion. It's one of the things where I see whatever I do is not enough, right? You have to keep doing it. And this is a goal that I find myself constantly chasing, right? All the goals in my scorecard are super green, but this one, like, I have to constantly change it, and then the bar gets higher each year. I think we talk about the third thing that I want to talk about is promote. We're talking to anywhere in different industries function. I think most of them are not even aware of the support that we offer, right? The initiatives that you can take. I think we need to communicate in a compelling way that is understood, not the usual LinkedIn post, not the posters, not the emails, but we actually have to communicate, which creates pride and ownership. I think so. When you say culture, it's about rituals, symbols, languages, and stories. And this is the four elements of culture, and you have to attack all four together. So this is something that I wanted to talk about. Of course, I can go on because it's something that I do for a living, and it drives me. And it's not. It's really been very challenging and the most enjoyable part of my job.
No, we can tell with the passion that you're talking, Namrata, that it's something that you truly enjoy, and it's something that you're great at as well. But for me, that's a very shocking statistic that 28% of companies don't even have a chief diversity officer, because like everything else, if it doesn't get measured or if there's nobody accountable for it, then guess what? That is not really a priority for the organization. Akansha, coming over to you. When we talk about ESG goals, we talk about the S for social and we talk about the E for environment. How do you think that the two are different, or how do you think the two are alike? Because I mean, we talk about corporate leaders and it's not as if they don't have enough responsibilities on their shoulders already, but now we are putting a few bits of extra load on their backs as well with regards to social and the environment. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thanks for asking this, Siddharth. But let me answer this with some data evidence. So there was a survey on global ESG practices conducted by BNP Paribas last year. And the survey tells us that about 46% respondents voted S to be the most difficult pillar to analyze and embed in their corporate strategies. More difficult even than E and G. Now, what does it tell us? It tells us that while E, S, and G, all three are extremely interconnected, and it's very difficult to isolate one and see it in silos. Companies in some way lack parameters or KPIs to have a greater control on S. And that also includes lack of access to information, and there might be challenges in terms of interpretation of data and other regional context. But the larger issue here is why don't we see the social part of it? And when we are talking about DEI at the center stage of E and G, because broadly, if you see, there's no single issue. If I talk about climate change, or if I talk about clean energy or better corporate governance, all of these are so much intertwined with having diversity and inclusion at the very center. Even if you look at SDGs, they are all related to inclusion in some way or the other. But that's what is even more surprising. And then also we lack metrics, we lack data, we lack even right kind of strategies at a broader level to have DEI into force. So I think this itself tells a lot. Also in terms of how we are evaluating the data, and of course, in some way the buck stops at more regulators. For example, MSCI, they have a long list of parameters to evaluate companies and firms on ESG index. And out of all their thematic indexes, 50% are environmental. And only 2 explicitly talk about S part of it, which is also more in relation to the community practices and the social practices in general. So what I'm trying to essentially say here is that, if there are also enough push points from organizations which are evaluating businesses and corporations on ESG practices, why are we not talking enough to bring S at the center stage and bring only climate and other clean energy things on priority, while we all know that everything is intertwined. So I will leave with this thought and wait for the next speaker. Thanks.
Absolutely. And one quick answer that why S is not given the priority that it deserves probably is because it's probably the most difficult to control. I think as Rachna had mentioned earlier, that no two individuals are ever alike. So forget entire communities or organizations. Rachna, coming over to you and talking about accountability as well. I think Namrata answered a little bit about it earlier, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on when we add ESG goals to senior executives and their goal sheets, what has been your experience, and have you, has it been welcomed? Has there been pushback? Has it been tweaked? I'm sure it's a work in progress, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Okay, thank you, Siddharth. On the social capital part, right? Bayer is one of the, Wall Street Journal rated Bayer as one of the top 100 companies, most sustainable companies across the world, particularly on the social capital piece. So I think we've made quite a bit of progress on that part. Coming back on the point of remuneration of the top management, I think Bayer is one of the few companies. I'm not privy to too many companies on this one, but one of the few companies where the top management remuneration is directly linked to the SDG targets. And it's fantastic because the global CEO is also the chief sustainable officer for the company. So it's driven down completely from the top and is measured at every level, as I said earlier, right? So there are two parts of sustainability measurement. One is what we do internally, right? Particularly on the social part. What are we doing internally, D&I, and beyond just gender? How are we working on the rest of the inclusion part? And even in India, I think we are one of the top companies rated almost every last 3 to 4 years on best companies for women to work for. Beyond that, what are we doing around our business? So I think, one of the few things, very interesting initiatives that we have is growing entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in the rural space. So we have something called a BLF, which is the Better Life Farming projects, which is basically building up agri-entrepreneurs at the rural areas, which is like one-stop solution for the farmers. Our effort has been to build up women agri-entrepreneurs in these locations. And it's not an easy one. It's basically societal change. The second part is through the healthcare business. We look at women's health very seriously, whether it's endometriosis, heavy menstrual bleeding, building awareness around health for women and self-care. So it's two parts. One, of course, the normal, internally what we do, which has to be driven down completely from the top, measured, a lot of accountability and incentivization, as I said. Second, how our business is touching the lives of women across the world. Right? So I think these are two aspects that I wanted to bring to the table.
Absolutely. And those are excellent points, Rachna. And I think Namrata and both Akansha had mentioned earlier that we all of us do so much, and yet it's like running on a treadmill. It is an ongoing battle, but it's something that, since all of us are passionate about, we will continue to fight and we'll continue to do. Sorry,
no, I see a few of our viewers from Bangladesh. I must bring this to the table as well. Right now, we last week we actually announced sponsoring the education of around a number of women from the rural community to a university called a university in Asian University for Women in Bangladesh. It's been sponsored, and these are higher education for women who come from families who've never had education. And some of these women actually get to go to Cambridge and Oxford. So it's that level of education. So there's a lot of effort going in, even on the education part, even on science and innovation. That's something that we really propagate. Say, how do we get more women in innovation, R&D, etc. But that's something that I wanted to let the Bangladesh viewers know as well.
No, absolutely. And I'm sure they'll be delighted to know about it and probably even read up a little bit more about the initiative. Just last two questions, and I'd like to open it to the panel, whoever wants to take it up. The first one is that, we talk about climate change and we talk about gender equality. A lot of these are associated with well-entrenched organizations, with organizations that have been around for a while, that have the resources to be able to throw, at problems like this that are probably at a global scale. And maybe you can kick this off. You work with a lot of startups, and startups have limited resources, and their first priority is to turn a profit. In your opinion, or in your experience, do startups also focus on these aspects? And if yes, how do they balance between saving the planet, having gender equality, and making a profit for their organizations?
Yeah, so first of all, this is a really, really great question. I would like to say I think most startups today, when they work on their startup, they build a startup. It is based on sustainability. It is like the core of what they do. For some years ago, you could either be a startup or you could do a social kind of enterprise. But today, it's like a startup is by definition a startup that support one or four or more of the 17 global goals. So I think that's the shift that we have seen that all businesses, and my point of view is like, if you build a new business, it must be supporting the 17 global goals. So with the work that we do with Shift Kimkin and Tiglif, the entrepreneurship as a sports, it's really where we literally had 600,000 startups, where, as I mentioned before, where more than 50% of them was female founders. And that was also where we found some of the best solutions, is that we need to make sure we give them the right resources and platform. So I'm actually right now in Austin, in South by Southwest, is starting here today. It is the middle of the night here, but starting here this morning. And this is where we will see a lot of the new themes, the metaverse, and the whole focus, of course, here is on impact. And what we make sure from ESG, the Work to Do list, is that we bring our female founders a lot of visibility into this platform. We also did it earlier this year at the Virtual World Economic Forum. And I want to point one thing out. End of last year at COP26, that took place in Glasgow, which of course was a mix of UN and the private sector and entrepreneurs and accelerators and investors and so on and so forth. There was one day during the 2 weeks that was dedicated for gender equality, how women are leading the energy transition. And what I love to see and what we are seeing is that there are a lot of female founders also in, you can say, if you take the energy sector, is historically very much a man-dominated industry, but there are so many female founders in that space. So I do think that our obligation, all of us, is to make sure that we are giving a platform to female founders, whatever you invest into female founders or whatever you are helping them in their startup or giving them a platform to show their solutions is very, very key. But I am very optimistic because I can see, because when last year it was 600,000 startups, it's a lot of startups, and we did really see female founders coming out with breakthrough solutions for the SDGs. So we are seeing the shift. So I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited about being here South by Southwest, where I will be at the Female Quotient, Gender Equality, which also Shelley Salis, which is part of this gender equality track that we are announcing together with UN Global Compact, where we will be speaking about how female founders are leading really on the ESG and building solutions across the 17 global goals.
Excellent. Thank you, Anna. If any of the other panelists want to jump in, or I could move on to my final question.
Siddharth, I think that's very interesting point that Anne made. I do mentor a few female startups, and I can tell you the passion that they bring to the table is amazing. Not that the males don't get it, but I think in terms of understanding the sustainability part, I think they do it very, very well, whether it is health, whether it is well-being, whether it is being empathetic towards people. And the interesting part is women startup actually are, women to women, I think, are very comfortable in terms of getting together and getting things done. That's one. But I do see a major challenge in raising funds. Fundraising is very, very difficult for women. And I'm yet to understand or crack the code of why we are not able to do that. But somewhere, whether it's regulation, whether it's support groups, somewhere I think we need to do something about raising funds for women startups.
Absolutely, Rachna, and well said. And I interact with a lot of VC firms and a lot of startups as well. And the honest answer is that, one, is it still an old boys club when you're raising money? Sadly, it is. Two, are there still apprehensions and are there still biases around okay, if it's only a female-led fund, what's going to happen once, God forbid, they get married and they have families? Will they be able to devote enough time to the business versus the family? And I know that's a very outdated concept and a very orthodox way of thinking, but sadly, that's still on the mindset of a lot of people that are writing the checks. And I hope a lot of them pay attention to the talk that we are having today and hope something changes. So the final question that I have for the panelists as well is that, and I hate to use the word historic and unprecedented, but the last 2 years have been definitely a roller coaster, to put it very mildly. Do you think, and this could probably be for Akansha and for Namrata as well, that has it accelerated or has it deaccelerated our focus on gender equality and on climate change?
I can go first.
Please.
So I think, the last few years, and you refer to a lot of disruption that happened. I think, if we can see more closely, these events have definitely unearthed the fragility of our society in different ways. And statistics tell us that inequality of all kinds have exponentially risen during past few years. This also means that, the S part of ESG has come to more spotlight because of the kind of disparities that it has aggravated, including D&I focus and gender inequalities. This has become much more important for organizations and for countries to really look at. The more challenging and unfortunate part is that in spite of all the action that has been happening at organizational and individual levels, I think there is lack of coherence in spite of all the data evidences and the statistics that, lack of coherence in terms of how to bring more, women-oriented focus on leadership at all levels. And I think that could be one area which includes a lot of action in terms of digital accessibility, more evidence-driven policy measures, and of course, more action by the leadership teams at organizational levels. So this is one thing that I wanted to add. Happy to listen others' views too.
Absolutely. Akansha, Namrata, any thoughts from your end?
Yeah, I would agree. I think events have seen in the last few years have been acting as a catalyst to the ESG efforts. Many policymakers and the change makers, right? And even investors are viewing this crisis as a wake-up call, actually. This accelerates a different approach to investing. Parallels have been drawn between unforeseen risks of pandemic and issues such as climate change. As a result, corporate boards, right, especially the board of governors and boards, and the management team have intensified the focus that we're placing on ESG. For example, the recent SEBI that you saw, the recent thing from SEBI, everything has been fast-tracked. Goals are being implemented in many organizations very fast. Organizations have been focusing on well-being, physiological, psychological, financial well-being of employees, and making sure the employees have access to basic requirements, right? There's a lot of talk of living wages that you see that wasn't there before. So these are few of the examples that I could come across.
Absolutely, Namrata. And what we'll do is we'll, in interest of time, probably just go around the room for some final thoughts. Rachna, we'd love to start off with you so that we don't leave you behind. Any final thoughts for us and the
I think
panel and the audience members?
Yeah, in terms of sustainability, and coming back to your last question, I think the discussion around ESG has really garnered a lot of interest. And we can see at every forum, every discussion has an element of ESG, whether it is environment, whether it's social or governance part of it. And I think we should continue this discussion. More and more companies, more and more individuals, and post-pandemic, I guess the interest, the seriousness of this topic has increased. And a lot of companies are jumping into it, but we need to walk the talk. And as women, I think we have a particular, I would say, a responsibility to drive this. And D&I has to be something that we need to drive, take it on us, rather than leaving it anywhere. And at every level, at every point, at every intersection. And that's what I would like to see for my, for everyone and for myself. I definitely have charted out some sort of a purpose for myself in driving this personally. It has to be a personal goal for all of us.
Well said, Rachna. Thank you so much. Akansha, any final thoughts from you?
I think the more revolutionary step would be integrating the S practice more into the boardrooms, and the focus it should be from inside to outside rather than doing more work on women empowerment and then focusing lesser on diversity and inclusion at leadership, and the whole range of issues which is pay scale parity, which is gender biased, and the gender assumed job roles and all those things. So I think the inside outside approach would be very, very important, and I leave this with this last note.
So true. Namrata, coming over to you, any final thoughts for us in the audience?
Yes, so I think the world is moving at a very fast pace. Everything is happening so fast. We're out of one crisis and we go to another, right? I say this with a lot of conviction because I came across a recent case of investment firm headquartered in London. They have laid down the expectation on the board diversity and time horizon by which they expect the companies to meet this, right? And which is for investing companies to have certain percentage of diversity. It's not for investing companies to have a percentage of gender diversity and members with economic minority background. I think the decision makers need to be aware how their competitors, how the industries in general, and the government is growing, right, on this agenda, and how that will influence the future. I think information and setting the right tone is the key to the outcome of this whole thing.
Couldn't have said it better. Anne, thank you for your patience. Over to you for your final thoughts, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I have two things. One thing is that, and that was what I talked about in the beginning, is the correlation. Companies are now putting a lot of effort into, if you look at climate or ocean or any of the 17 global goals. And when we went to COP end of last year, we saw many of the pledges, if you look at the 1.5, and so there's a huge amount of investment and effort put into this, but we need to make sure when we run those huge transformation projects in companies, if we look at the energy sector itself, you're talking about a totally 360 change, new energy resource and so on. We need to make sure that we get the D&I right at the same time. So keep an eye on this correlation. The way I look at it is that it's great to get to the ambition you want to get to, but if you don't get the D&I at the same time moving in the right direction, you are missing part of the work that you need to do. That's one thing. Secondly, I forgot to mention around the World To-Do List, ESG, Entrepreneurship as a Sport. We actually have a TV channel on GOTV, and this is a platform where we are talking a lot about female founders, and we are starting now a new show where we will have our great female founders coming out of ESG speaking about how to be a startup, how to get the investments. And of course, I will welcome anybody. We do it, I mentioned, together with UN Global Compact and Female Quotient, but anybody to come in and speak about how is it to be a female founder, or how can I support a female founder? Because you can say, if you can see other females doing it, why should you be able to do the same things? So it's like leading by example. So the GOTV, we have a TV channel there. So we have a big focus on this now going forward to accelerate this. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. And leading by example is a great way to end the panel. You've all been a wonderful panel and great speakers. So thank you to all of you for taking the time to do this. And I wish you all the best in your SDG goals and in your personal lives as well. So over to you, Vandana. Thank you again for walking us through this entire panel discussion.
Great. Thank you, Siddharth. Some fantastic questions. And we got a lot of really great wins coming out. Just to summarize just a few of the major points, it really was about awareness, sensitization, incentivization, and integration. Those themes came up quite a lot. And if we just look at, what Anne said, ambition, without DEI means there's no future for humanity, if I put it really bluntly. And, an increase in seeing, companies take DEI seriously is going to show, us having a thriving world in all E, S, and G. And the example of female founders and the best solutions were women, that's something that's been echoed throughout this conference. So, and thank you for giving us some hard evidence on that too. That was brilliant. Females understand the challenges. Let's get them into decision making. And startups, yes, startups, if you're out there, and I see this because I mentor a lot of startups, they all have some kind of SDG goal as part of it. And I think Namrata and also Rachna talked about this. It can't be done as a separate strategy. It's got to be integrated within. And I think Akanksha mentioned that as well. So Namrata, some of your really good points. 28% of companies still don't have, of the larger companies, don't have a DEI officer, which is quite concerning. But organizations like SEBI, once they bring in recommendations, then awareness starts to flow. We need to be able to hear those voices, but more than hearing those voices, we need to understand how those voices can contribute. So having diverse management teams is going to also help us increase profits. We have to be those agents of change. Akanksha, I really like the idea of inclusion being the heart of all SDGs, and allowing everyone to have access to opportunities and participation in decision making. Yes, there are challenges with data, but let's deal with that. That is something that we're going to have coming up again and again. And your idea of gender neutral job descriptions is a great one. Rachna, I think the idea of walk the talk is really important, and we've got to be able to measure somehow. So let's figure out the measurement and make sure we are moving in the right direction. And sponsoring education, the whole rural, allowing them to go to university, building women agri-entrepreneurs, starting at the bottom of the pyramid, I think is so important. So I would like to leave with just a couple of things that seem to be a theme during this conference as well. Walk the talk, but make it as short as possible. So we should get walking as quickly as possible. Solve through involve. So let's solve the problems by involving the people who are really suffering and have done for generations. And another point that came up yesterday, but seems to be echoed here as well, whilst it may take a village to raise a child, it takes women to build that village. So let's support women, and whether it's climate change or whether it's any of the other SDGs, we're going to achieve them. So thank you so much to a brilliant panel, some really brilliant discussions. And we look forward to seeing everyone coming back at 5 o'clock, where we're going to have our final sessions. So thank you all to our speakers. Thank you, Siddharth, for doing such a great job moderating and getting the discussion going. Everyone else, thank you for watching, and we'll see you back at 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Vandana. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, Ms. Sinha. Good evening.
Good
Can you
evening,
please speak?
everyone. Good evening, everyone. We are actually live at the moment. So I'd request everyone, we will be joining back in about 3 or 4 minutes. Vaishali ji, if you want to speak to any of our distinguished guests who are going to be part of the valedictory, please go ahead. But just wanted to let you know that we are live at the moment.
Yes, hello everybody. No, just good to see everybody. Nice to see everybody virtually, and I just want to make sure we can see each other and hear each other. That's all. So perhaps we could do a quick check. But really delighted to have everybody here.
Great idea. So perhaps in turn we could ask people to unmute so that we can check. Do we have? Let's see. Okay, Sandra. Sandra,
yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Sandra. Great to have you. Sounds great. Vaishali, your sound is fantastic. Sujata? Sujata, are you there? We can't hear you though.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
This is Namaste, Vaishali ji, Namaste.
Dr. Chaturvedi, great. Yes. You are loud and clear. Fantastic. Okay, perhaps if we could find out who's with the minister at the moment and just check that mic quickly.
Okay. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay.
Is there someone there from Javadekar sir's office who can just do a mic check for us? Aha, great.
Yeah, so we'll be joining in a moment.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We just wanted to check that the mic is working, so that's great. So if we, that's brilliant. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
If we could just check Siddhartha again.
Sujata, please unmute yourself.
Not from our side, Sujata. You're not muted. It's not allowing you to. Okay, Sustainiverse, if you could just check.
We'll check it.
Okay, thank you. For everyone else, we are going to go live in a minute or so. We're going to start with a video, so we'll just give it another minute and then we'll come on live.
Hello?
Hi, is that Sujata?
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, हाँ जी.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. We
ठीक
can
है.
hear you.
Okay, okay.
Great.
ठीक है.
All right. Okay. Well, welcome back, everyone, for the valedictory session of the 5th Global Gender Equality Summit from the UN Global Compact. And we have a message from Asim Kumar in the chat box for our distinguished guests. It's wonderful to have all of you here. We've got people joining in from across the world. My name is Vandana Saxena, and I'm going to be your anchor today. If I could ask the speakers to please mute at the moment so that we don't have any background noise. Excellent. And just before we get started, I'd like to start with a video from our title partner, Renewable. Our chair of this whole summit, Vaishali Sinha, she's been so dynamic with the whole organization of everything. We're really happy to have a video from Renewable, which is a leading renewable energy company. It's fantastic to have your support for this conference. So we'll go ahead and watch the video. Thank you.
This is the Renew Hub, home to one of India's leading renewable energy producer, Renewable. The position we achieved while growing several times faster than the renewable energy industry in India as a whole since our inception.
There were really two pressing issues that faced humanity at that point in time. The first was the issue of climate change. And the second was the issue of energy requirements for a fast-growing country like India. The idea was to leave behind a clean and sustainable planet for our future generations.
Armed with this philosophy, we are a renewable energy producer focused on utility-scale wind and solar energy projects, as well as distributed solar energy projects. We started with a small project of 25 megawatt. Since then, we have come a long way, becoming one of India's leading renewable energy producer. A key component of our growth is a strongly diversified operational footprint spread across multiple resource, geography, off-takers and vendors. Our project selection is disciplined and focused on delivering reliable long-term returns. We operate and maintain our projects at the highest levels through robust execution capabilities and O&M procedures. We have an efficient capital structure with access to a range of project finance and debt instruments. We have a highly experienced management team, and our people are our strength.
As we go on building a sustainable organization, it is very important that we get the right people on board. In particular, we believe that engaging the next generation is critical.
We are committed to the development and adoption of clean energy technologies through innovative research facilitated by industry-academia partnerships. We value all our partnerships and do our bit to light up the lives of those at the grassroots. As we grow and earn accolades, the greatest one continues to be our role as a key contributor to India's renewable energy growth and helping reduce its carbon footprint.
It is imperative for India to achieve energy self-sufficiency, and I see Renew Power playing an extremely important role in meeting those targets. We want to lead by example and leave behind a cleaner, sustainable planet for our future generations. That is the mission that we at Renew Power are embarked upon.
Welcome officially to the valedictory session. My name is Vandana Saxena, and I'm your guide of ceremonies for this last section. Now, the UN Global Compact Network India has been putting on this Gender Equality Summit for 5 years. And today we have two really important, or yesterday and today, we've been joining together two of the most important sustainability goals. We've got climate change and we've got gender, and we've been bringing them together. Now, to give his opening remarks, I would like to welcome Dr. Chaturvedi to the session. I will just do a very brief introduction. Professor and Director Chaturvedi is at the Birla Institute of Management Technology, known as BIMTech, Greater Noida, and alternate President of Education Promotion Society for India. He has more than 45 years of experience in teaching, research, and academic administration. He's been a director of the All India Council for Technical Education, the AICTE, a statutory body under the Government of India. And being a renowned management educationalist, he's been deeply involved with national bodies like AIMA, NHRDN, AIMS, and the Indian Management Conclave, annually organized by the MBAuniverse.com. And he's on the board of governors of several prominent universities. Dr. Chaturvedi, over to you to give the opening remarks.
Thank you, Vandana. Respected Mr. Prakash Javadekar, former Union Minister for Education as well as for Environment, Ms. Sandra Wu, Board Member of United Nations Global Compact at the level of whole world, Ms. Sujata Malik, participants, speakers, organizers. A very good evening to all. It gives me an immense pleasure to have you all at the 5th Gender Equality Summit of United Nations Global Compact Network India today. I am sure you have had 2 days of very diligent and crucial discussions. I must begin by complimenting the chair, Ms. Vaishali Sinha, the guest, honorable ministers, and the participants who have made the event a huge success. A special thanks to UN Global Compact Network India, who has been the first in the race to take up the theme of gender equality and climate change and target the two significant goals of sustainable development, which are goal number 5 and goal number 13. As rightly said, the fundamental value of GES Summit every year, an inclusive and equitable work environment and a just ecosystem has continued and was witnessed in this year's event too. I congratulate UNGCNI for organizing its 5th Gender Equality Summit and creating a niche place in the theme Target 2030 towards a gender-responsive climate commitment. As a person from academics, I consider education as a crucial factor to promote climate action and promote gender equality. All present and interlinkage. Considering the issue of climate change, education and widespread awareness helps people understand and address the impacts of the climate crisis, empowers them with the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes needed to act as agents of change. The international community recognizes the importance of education and training to address climate change. The UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Paris Agreement, and the Associated Action Plan agenda call on all the major stakeholders to educate, empower, and engage all the major groups on policies and actions relating to climate change, especially youth, children, students, and the future change makers. Friends, there is a lot in common between education and gender equality. Both are instrumental to the development of a society, as also intrinsic to living in a society and interacting with fellow beings. To stop the perpetuation of gender inequality through institutions as well as to address the existence in the society at large, initiatives to promote gender equality in and through schools, colleges, and universities are imperative. The GES platform has proven to be very beneficial for the future leaders in terms of providing deeper insights about the transformations needed in the global era today. Students, especially those who want to enter industry, policy making, or other path-breaking roles, today understand the importance of inclusivity, diversity, climate resilience, model of ESG transformations. I'm very delighted to share with all of you that my institute has taken an initiative with one French company, which is called AXA Reinsurance, and we are offering a course on sustainability and climate risk, which has been developed by BBC, and it will be offered from next academic session to all the students at BIMTech, so as to make them aware about the challenging issues related to climate risk. Platforms like GES 2022 have changed the prism of framing the business policy models or shaping the social value creation. Surely the summit taught us the power of working together and thinking through the contemporary problems. Furthermore, it called for a holistic integration of a gender perspective into the design, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting of national environment policies to strengthen mechanisms and to provide adequate resources to ensure women's full and equal participation in decision-making at all levels on environmental issues, particularly on strategies related to the impact of climate change on the lives of women and girls. I think that all over the world, we have seen that whenever some disasters happen because of the climate risk and global warming, the most or worst sufferers are women and girls. So I think we need to make a situation when they are saved, they are protected, and they become the masters of their own destiny. I compliment the organizers of GES 2022 for the effort that they have put in, for the kind of subjects that they have addressed, for the participants that they have drawn, and for doing this when it is needed the most. I wish you luck in all the endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chaturvedi, for those fantastic words. And yes, we heard, and I'm sure Sujata is going to be speaking about this, we heard that women are 14 times more likely to have to suffer from environmental challenges. But now, the real expert, Sujata Malik, we're very grateful to have you here as PwC and the knowledge partner to just give us some of the key takeaways.
Thank you, Vandana. I hope I'm audible now and visible too. Good evening to all of you. And I think it's a great privilege to be part of this very august valedictory session with Dr. Chaturvedi, Ms. Sandra Wu, and Mr. Javadkar and Tamanna to be my co-speakers. I think I've been already assigned a very challenging yet encouraging task to consolidate the key takeaways of the last 2 days discussion, where we discussed several critical elements aligned to gender equality and climate action as we move towards the target of 2030. And, in these 2 days, we have seen a constellation of speakers, representing a range of stakeholders, including businesses, academia, UN organizations, and civil society. They were practitioners, policymakers, think tanks, and of course, leaders. And, we started with the introductory session with, reinforcing the need for prioritizing inclusive action in climate crisis, especially with the focus on the bottom of the pyramid and without leaving anyone behind. We also heard about experiences from global business leaders who've talked about diversity to be included in the core agenda and the value of the organization as they move towards achieving their net zero goals. I think it was very reaffirming when we heard the commitment from our union minister, where Government of India is targeting towards an inclusive Atmanirbhar Bharat through a range of schemes which are aligned to women's empowerment, renewable energy, and encouraging entrepreneurship. In this session, we also launched the co-branded, knowledge paper between PwC and UNGCNI on gender equality and climate action with women in the core. I think the core message was on the role of women across institutions, having access to finance, technology, evidence, and the need for collective action to strengthen the pathway of gender-responsive climate action. This next session was a very interesting session of a panel of CEOs, largely focusing on how businesses can prioritize gender-responsive climate action. There were several key messages that emerged. Some of them were, the need for focus on education, skilling, and training, and focusing on young minds, as you also said, Dr. Chaturvedi, that it is important that we build and create the band of future leaders who have inclusive thinking, and that gets integrated into organization as we talk about climate change. Some of the key elements that were discussed in this regard were very important, that, key values such as people, planet, partnership, purpose, and performance were very important as organizational values as we integrate themes of gender equality and climate action. Speakers were also conscious that in India, we are struggling to enhance the participation of women in the workforce. And there was an increasing need that was discussed, that women need to participate across the value chain, and of course, in decision-making around the boardroom. The other theme, and I think several exciting examples were also discussed, like women in dairy farms, women working in shop floors across various, time durations, where they can work and contribute effectively across different domains. The other thing that emerged, while large businesses needs to lead the way and take this agenda and steer the agenda forward, but it is important to recognize and incentivize the role of MSMEs, where we are seeing encouraging contribution in the creating diversity and inclusive green innovation. The next session was the spotlight session, where it was around breaking stereotypes. And I think it was very well represented across three diverse, speakers who have really broken stereotypes in their own domains. We had Zareen Daruwala, who was representing the finance and the banking sector, and she focused on how as women leaders, we need to be empathetic, but we need to change our leadership styles depending on situations to drive goals like sustainability within our firms. She also talked about the need for involving women and creating an enabling environment as we do so. She talked about mapping talent, the talent pool, and it's important to recognize women talent within the organization as we move, strengthen our goals on diversity. We also had Mr. Nanavati, who had a path-breaking role across decades in the country and was a voice of millions of women who have transcended stereotypes. And he worked towards adapting clean energy as they were being empowered, were getting economically empowered through green solutions. Subsequently, we had from across the globe, Ms. Robin Grew, who talked about expanding the dialogue of diversity by celebrating differences and ensuring that there is a larger representation of the underrepresented groups in decision making, and especially in themes like climate change. And moving ahead, on the second day, we talked about issues that are very critical and more practical as we move ahead in this journey of making climate action more inclusive. Is talking about inclusive technology and innovation to mitigate climate crisis. Here, speakers did recognize the traditional, STEM and technology were traditionally dominated by men, but there was an increasing interest and participation of women in this regard, and an increasing role of women or leaders to ensure that women's participation in technology and their needs are taken into cognizance while designing innovative technologies for climate resilience. The other element that emerged was the importance of data and evidence that would help business leaders to take inclusive decisions. The last session that we had was again where businesses are extensively now thinking and contributing in the ESG mandate. While ESG mandate has got significant recognition post the COVID, where we have seen enhanced inequities, but it has also been a leveler as investors have also focused on D&I indicators. But what speakers talked about was the need for a greater understanding, awareness, and capacity building around the shifting D&I agenda, the more broader perspective that needs to be integrated within business functioning, with business values and business goals. Speakers did talk about the positive initiatives that have been taken from the regulatory perspectives taken by SEBI, by the implementation of POSH, as well as, representation, the regulation and representation of women in boards. But however, implementation continues to be an important agenda to focus on. Also, speakers spoke about diversity to be looked beyond women's empowerment, because there are several underrepresented group who needs more prominence and focus as we move ahead with the D&I agenda. Some data shared by our speakers, especially around the underrepresentation on some of women in especially with 28% of the companies who do not have a diversity chief of diversity officer amongst the top organization was also an eye-opener. However, I think what was really focused on about the women incubators, where a significant climate and positive climate solutions have been emerging, and the whole focus was around encouraging women entrepreneurs and startup organizations to bring a shift into this whole situation. So overall, I think speakers did talk about some challenges, but I think we have seen a range of solutions and range of opportunities that have emerged during discussion. And the fact that we all have come together from different parts of the world, as well as from different platforms and organizations, it seems that we have seen a collective commitment towards gender equality, and where we are working towards positive climate action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sujatha, for that fantastic summary. At the end of the day, it's just like a seed needs air and oxygen and water and other things to grow. It's very clear that to have a healthy business, we need diversity. We need cross-fertilization of ideas. And I, really applaud Vaishali and team who put together this fantastic summit so we could get those diversity of ideas together. Thank you so much for that summing up, Sujatha. So now I would like to welcome Sandra Wu Wen-Siu. She's the chairperson and CEO of Kokusai Kogyo, which is a member of the United Nations Global Compact Board. She's a board member of Global Compact Network Japan and a member of the Advisory Committee on National Resilience, Disaster Reduction and Mitigation to the Cabinet Secretariat. She is the chair of the board of councillors at sorry about the pronunciation, but Shizen-kan Graduate School of Leadership and Innovation. I hope that was okay, Sandra. And she co-founded the Japan Asia Group and was its director until 2021. She was also with the World Economic Forum, where she was the co-chair of the Infrastructure and Urban Development Industry Group in 2017. She's a graduate from the Department of Chinese Literature, National Taiwan University, and the Advanced Management Program at Harvard Business School. So we would love you, Sandra, to share your special remarks on the conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madonna. Thank you very much. Distinguished guests and participants and the fellow speakers. First of all, my heartfelt congratulations to everyone who joined and participated in this great event, UN Global Compact Network India's 5th Gender Equality Summit. And as a member of the UN Global Compact Board, I wish to express my appreciation for the leadership shown by GCN India to address the most complex challenge of our times, climate crisis and the gender inequality. As the chairperson and CEO of a Japanese company and a woman, I acknowledge the need for this event and similar ones in both our countries. So in 2021, Japan ranked 121st among 150 countries in the Global Gender Gap Report by the World Economic Forum. That actually puts us ahead of India, ranked 140th, but honestly, there's not much of a difference here. We live and work in countries where the basics of gender equality, such as gender is not a binary category, it's not just about women. Women are not a homogeneous group. There is great diversity of views, needs, and challenges found among us, contained by that simple label. And there needs to be more than simple numeric representation, still need to be repeated until they are ingrained in our understanding. So having said that, I wish to note actually that my company has just signed up to the women's empowerment principles last year, and that has been a huge step forward for us. We are working on, for example, increasing the representation of women among our executives. So I'm not saying that we cannot start with a focus on the binary or on numeric representation. Everyone in Japan and India, as well as the world, needs to start thinking about gender equality. And the earlier we all start, the better it will be for all of us. Events such as this Gender Equality Summit that teaches us the complexity and the enormity of the issues at hand, it's a help to all of us at any stage of the journey. For example, because of these discussions led by Global Compact and its networks, the way my company approaches women empowerment is not simply catering to the needs of our women workers. Instead, our approach is to gradually change the working conditions and the culture of all our workers, including the men, and ensure that the way we ask people to contribute and the way we evaluate their contribution is fair and acceptable to our increasingly diverse workforce. But to get back to the bigger picture, Japan and India's global ranking tells us that we live and work in countries where we are attempting to build a future on a foundation that is flawed with our head in the sand. Both our countries need to take action urgently toward gender equality. Otherwise, we undermine our very efforts we make towards sustainability because we are choosing to leave a significant part of our community behind. I actually have an insight on how gender and the climate may be addressed together. I served on the advisory panel for our government's Gender Equality Bureau, considering gender aspects of reconstruction following the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. Basically, we were discussing how to bring in gender equality into disaster risk reduction. Like you discussed the question of gender equality and the climate action. There are many specific recommendations coming out of the panel, but in a nutshell, the key finding is that disaster will intensify the inequalities and imbalances that already exist in society. So the impact of a disaster is usually greater for those at the socioeconomic advantage with less of a safety net. They are vulnerable, they are affected to a greater degree by disasters and have less ability to recover resiliently. And the same people are often living in situations with greater exposure, location at the risk of floods or landslides or droughts, because that is what it means to be marginalized. And this is actually relevant to your discussion in this summit, as the climate crisis will bring frequent and more extreme disaster and more impact. So you are probably thinking, what did the panel say about how to lessen the impact? Well, the panel concluded that the only way forward is to work on gender equality, not just during or after a disaster, but in day-to-day life. There's no way around it. We must change as a society, and we must identify the gender inequality in our workplaces, communities, in our homes, and change. We must take action in everyday life, not just when there is a tangible crisis. As the DRR community knows, crisis events can be a springboard for action. people are willing to listen right after a disaster for a short window of time on how to do things better in the future. So COVID has been a very horrible thing to happen to our society, but it is creating this window of opportunity for us to change, and we must take this opportunity. So in closing, I note that businesses can be a force of change. We can justify our decision to move in certain direction with data and the numbers. Arguments of customs and the tradition do not hold us back. And we are deeply embedded in our communities. How we do things within our organization will have an effect on what we do at home and what happens in our communities. The Global Compact came into being when then Secretary General Kofi Annan proposed to business leaders that we put a human face on the global market by coming together, committing to the 10 principles, being transparent and communicating on our progress. I applaud and appreciate India's long-running Gender Equality Summit and your collective decision to put gender at the forefront of our SDGs action race. And I'm certain that it will have positive impact on your society and also others in Asia, including ours. I wish to close my remarks by congratulating your launch of the knowledge paper on gender equality in climate action with your knowledge partner, PwC, and adding my word of appreciation for the efforts of Ms. Vaishali Sinha at the Renewable Power, who has chaired the Gender Equality Summit for the past 4 years. I was honored to be part of the program of your wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for sharing your views and your perspective. Fantastic. Now I would like to hand over to Vaishali Sinha, who is the chair of the United Nations Global Compact Network in India's 5th Gender Equality Summit. And she will then introduce our keynote address from Prakash Javadekar. Vaishali, over to you. Vaishali, are you there? I think we may have a slight problem. I think she'll be joining in. Prakashji, just apologies for a second. Vaishali ji? So perhaps what I can do in the meantime is just do a very brief introduction to Prakashji and then wait for Vaishali ji to join back. I'm sure she's coming back. Prakashji represents the Bharatiya Janata Party. He's a member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha from Maharashtra from 2018 April. He's previously served as the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Minister of Information and Broadcasting, and Minister of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises. Served as elected to the upper house of the Rajya Sabha as a member of Parliament from Maharashtra in 2008 and re-elected from Madhya Pradesh in 2014. Following the victory of the Bharatiya Janata Party in 2014, India's general election, he was appointed Minister, State Independent Charge for Environment, Forests and Climate Change by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He's also Minister of State for Parliamentary Affairs and briefly held the portfolio of Information and Broadcasting. Prakashji, over to you for the keynote address.
Thank you very much. And I'm very happy that the Gender Equality Summit, which is initiative of Renew Power and the powerful couple in Suman Sinha and Vaishali Sinha, that they are organizing every year. And I was lucky to participate in New York on 1 or 2 occasions. I have not heard the whole deliberation, but the summary given was very good by Sujata. But before I give my comment on the specific subject, let me tell you that climate change is a real crisis. And the latest IPCC report also gives us complete full indications of what impacts it could have, what disastrous impacts this climate change will bring to all of us in next 2-3 decades. But at the same time, let me tell you that climate crisis is the creation of over carbon accumulation of over 200 years. And India is not part of the problem, but India wants to be part of the solution because we suffer. And we have taken commitments in Paris and renewed and improved upon in Glasgow. And India is the only G20 country which is definitely following what we have said. We walk the talk. But there are two concerns which are very important. A, developed world promised in Copenhagen to mobilize $100 billion per year, and it has not come. So how developing countries and the developing world will create adaptation capabilities and other measures which are required to combating the climate change? And the technology transfer. In technology transfer, companies want business or profit. My simple question is, if we are, and which is actually the climate crisis is a disaster, then why to profit from disaster? We should not, and world should not. And now we are putting more and more restrictions on many other things. But I was wondering, if we think that coal is the villain, why we don't ban coal exports? That doesn't happen because then business interests of those specific countries which export come in way. But today we are not talking about generally about climate change, but we are talking about a specific gender equality efforts with the gap pointed out by the world agencies. Let me tell you that India has taken tremendous stride. I was Minister of Education in 2016. That time our premier institutes, Indian Institute of Technologies, had only 4% of girl students. We took specific steps and created a special supernumerary quota for girl students. And today I'm happy to report that within 6 years, the percentage has gone up from 4% to 20%. They are part of the incubation story. They are part of the startup story. They are part of the growth. And there is another scheme also where we are Stand Up India, where we are giving them loans up to 10 million rupees. So this is, and there are more than 200,000 women who have taken those loans and are doing their enterprises. They run their enterprises. So this is India, but more importantly, where the gap comes from? The gap comes from the sex ratio. If you have a less sex ratio, that means women are undernourished, malnutrition, and therefore the sex ratio gets reduced because nature has its own scheme for equality. But I'm happy to note that with our efforts of Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, now the India's sex ratio has changed dramatically in the last 7-8 years. So this is what has happened. I know that climate change will bring disaster to the world and women will be more sufferer, but taking cue from what will happen and what will be the shape of the things, what we have done is we have already taken care of it. And if there is water shortages, women will require to go more lengths to fetch water. We are giving tap water into untapped houses. And there are more than 12 crores or 120 million. We have already given 50 million households with tap water. And in next 3 years, we will complete that every house in India will have tap water and assured water supply. This is a huge achievement which empowers women. More importantly, she needs to be owner of her situation. And the new scheme which we have brought in, or the Prime Minister's housing scheme, and even regular properties will be registered now only in the joint name of husband and wife. So she will be the owner of her property. That's a major initiative of India, and that will solve the problem. I sometimes, as my Japanese colleague Sue was wondering that in gender equality gap, we are at the lower end, Japan also and India also. But I really doubt the methodology adopted by such ranking surveys and organizations. We are working on it. Because I can tell you that in India, during the pandemic, not a single household suffered hunger. Because we have given 800 million poor people free ration for last 2 years. So this is a very emphatic state, and this has actually helped that there was not a single death due to hunger in this vast country. So we are going ahead with our inclusive schemes. If there is scarcity of water and forest recedes, and in many countries, forests have receded. But I'm proud to say that in last 7 years, India has increased its tree cover by 17,000 square kilometers. It's not a small achievement. And therefore, and now women, 98% of the households in India are equipped with LPG. 90 million were provided LPG free of cost. And we have made redundant to cut the trees and use it as fire fuel. There was no migration because of hunger. We have also taken many steps. Skill. More than 260 million girl students or youngsters, young women have been trained in various skills which immediately gives them reasonable and good jobs. For starting their own enterprise, 68% of 34 crore people. Vaishali, welcome.
Sorry,
Instead
Prakash
of you, I am welcoming.
Sorry about that, Prakash ji. I am, if I don't want to interrupt you, but may I interrupt you and introduce you, because that will.
No, she has already introduced me. And See,
Okay.
introduction is a formality. The main issue, what I'm talking is, if that is noted, that is important.
Sure,
So
Prakash.
MMR has
Go ahead.
also reduced. MMR has reduced. And our birth rates has also reduced. It is now nearing our replacement rate. So this is all talks about empowerment of women power. We have also enacted very progressive laws for women's reproduction rights and stopping commercial surrogacy. There are tribal women also, forest dwellers, who are empowered. In Mudra Yojana, I was telling that out of 340 million loans given, 200 million are women entrepreneurs. And they're doing good business. And they're returning their funds given by the bank and are employing others. So I can say we have created separate toilets in all the schools which didn't have a separate toilet for girl students. But now that has happened. And so now we have large number after independence, 78 members of parliament, women, 11 ministers who are women. They are now into fighting force of Air Force, Navy, and they are admitted now from this season in India also, National Defense Academy, and more importantly, they are also included now in Sainik schools. So all this put together tells the story of how India is on its own bridging the gap between or of women, because they have to really mitigate on day-to-day basis the effects of climate change. And that is what we are aiming at. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a vision for it. Therefore, he has started solar power. We have promised that by 2030, we will have 500 gigawatts renewable power mix in our energy mix. Today, we have more than 136 gigawatts already achieved, of which very good substantial part is being done by Renew Power also. They are one of the major players. This is the development of last 7-8 years. And I can say that all this, we have also created Disaster Resilient Infrastructure Initiative, Coalition of Disaster Resistance Infrastructure. And many countries have joined. So we are preparing not only our women folk, but everybody to mitigate the challenge. Our actions are proactive and world can take cue from India on effective actions in shortest possible time. And so this was good initiative of Sinha couple, as I said, the power couple, and they will definitely continue this initiative for years together. And every time there is a new topic, I was also part of the program once in New York and somehow on by remote also. So all the best for such initiatives. And more importantly, we should thank all the speakers who have contributed, because such brainstorming brings out the common programs which can be taken up by various governments, industries, and organizations. So thank you once again, and I'm very happy to join this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prakash ji, for your wonderful words. I'd like to pass over to Vaishali Sinha, who is the chair of the GES Summit for the United Nations Global Compact India Network, to say a few words. Vaishali, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you. And I think we are so reliant on technology. Prakash ji, I'm actually in Europe and I had limited control. I wasn't in my office where I have more control, but then we are at the mercy of technology. I hope, you'll forgive me for dropping off at the exactly wrong time. But I want to say that, there is no formal introduction. You require no introduction. We have seen you deliver as a minister in the area of climate change, in the area of, the HRD ministry. And I have met you as a person, as a husband, as a father. And I think those are areas where we get to know people and their commitment to issues like equity and whether it is on gender, whether it's on social issues. And I must say, even before you became a minister, I was so impressed in my first meeting, the amount of respect you have for women and the kind of support you have extended, I think is exemplary. And in my view, when you believe in a subject from your heart, that's when you can actually do something when you go beyond that. And so thank you so much for being who you are. I have ensured that people around me, at least men in my life, take inspiration from you, and really very grateful for your leadership. Also, as far as the nation is concerned, we're very grateful. And whatever we say with respect to our listing, ranking, it takes time to climb up the ladders. After all, we are a 1.3 billion nation. But the amount of work which has been done under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Narendra Modi ji, with respect to putting women at the center of the nation, of our country's priority, has been exemplary indeed. And the amount of attention given to details, engagement of women at the grassroots, work which is being done for them at the grassroots, has been exemplary. And sometimes it's just a litmus test, a dipstick you can do when I go to places in remotest parts of the country. As you know, Honorable Minister, we have to do that, Prakash ji, as we go to different parts of the country. Women talk about the homes, the infrastructure, which is enabling them to lead more complete lives and more comfortable lives, more convenient lives. And that is super critical. And that is a dipstick which gives us a sense of the change which is happening on the ground. So we're very grateful for that. And thank you for those initiatives, which, whether you're in the government, outside the government, I know this government is very dedicated. We have to start measuring outputs as well. And this conference is a small way to do this. Along with the Global Compact Network India team, over the last 5 years, in our small way, we have been doing a bit, and contributing towards this bit by bit with respect to some academia, partnership, research-driven recommendations to the government. And, we will continue our journey and our contribution in this area. I'm very grateful to the team here, the UN Global Compact Network India team. We can think, we can have a vision, we can have a mission, but it has to be done on the ground. So thank you to the team here who helps us get things done. And, thank you for taking out the time, Prakash ji, for coming here. It's very motivational for us when leaders come and take our time and share knowledge and share data, because sometimes it is not very well understood. When we interact with the government, we've seen how hard the government is working to bring about socio-economic change. And, when you say it, we hear it and we believe it. Thank you for doing what you do, and really appreciate your taking out the time on this important topic of SDG 5 and SDG 7 and SDG 17, gender, climate change, and collaboration, because independently we cannot do anything. Together we can conquer. Thank you. I couldn't introduce you, but I'm just expressing gratitude for all that you do, and really appreciate Prakashji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prakashji. Thank you very much, Vaishali, for that wonderful vote of thanks, as it were, for Prakashji. What I'd now like to do is to hand over to Tamanna Giridhar, who's going to be giving the vote of thanks for the conference. Tamanna, over to you.
Thank you, Vandana. A very good evening to all our speakers, partners, members, and delegates all across the board who are attending this 5th Gender Equality Summit. It's an honor to propose a vote of thanks at our 5th Gender Equality Summit on behalf of Global Compact Network India. And sincere thanks to the former Union Minister, Shri Prakash Javadekar, and Environment and Forest and HRD Ministry. So we are very grateful for your generous time amidst a tough situation. Thank you for gracing the event. And as you rightly mentioned, that India stands tall in part of the climate change solutions, walking the talk in contemporary issues. Today, in both the days of the summit, right from discussing the disproportionate impact of climate change on gender to talking about the gaps, to the targeting new gender solutions and suggesting greener and inclusive way forward, the summit has surely set the tone for its original purpose. These 2 days, we have heard the speakers sharing the immense powerful insights, their journey of leadership role, and teaching us that the future is surely better when more women take decisions in the boardroom. For better leadership, it's important to value the diversity, differences, culture, perspective at the table. Countries who are taking more action on the gender equality, create the greater debates, generate more equity, and hence give the better climate results. Over to this, I would like to take this occurrence to thank Dr. Alka Mittal, President UNGCNI and CMD at ONGC Group of Companies, for her immense support she has been doing in the past 4 years and supporting the Gender Equality Summit along with the climate change issues and presenting a valuable views. I would also like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Vaishali Sinha, Chair of UNGCNI Global Compact Gender Equality Summit, Chair Renew Foundation, and Chief Sustainability Officer at Renew Power. Ma'am, we really appreciate your constant support that you have provided us in the past 4 years, and your contributions and your incredible support are on path of achieving the Agenda 2030, and especially in the India. Entire team of GCNI stands in gratitude for your hard work, for your diligence, and for your service that you have dedicated to this platform. So we thank you very much for that. Sandra Wu, member of Global Compact, Chairperson and CEO, Kokusai Kogyo. Thank you very much, Sandra, for presenting your prolific thoughts and sharing the insights on how Japan is facing on the gender equality. Dr. Chaturvedi, Director at the BIMTech. So we are very grateful for your presence and the very solid inputs and how the academic institutions are taking their way forward into gender neutralization and making the impact in all the academic institutions. So thank you very much, sir, for your support that BIMTech has been providing in the past 4 years. A special thanks to Sujata Malik and the entire PwC team as a knowledge partner. Your partnership has been extremely delightful and productive. With the release of the thought paper by GCNI and the PwC today on gender equality in climate action, we have made an endeavor to envision a green economy with women as active participants rather than passive recipients of action and inaction. This paper has already endeavored to set a blueprint towards a gender-responsive climate commitment and addressing the impact of the climate change. So thank you, entire team of the PwC, for bringing up this initiative and giving us this gender equality for the climate integration, which is very much the need of the hour. I must remark a prolific sense of gratitude to all of our speakers who have been attending these 2-day summit with their immense insights, immense information, and all the participants of the summit who are inspired by your grateful thoughts. I'm thankful to all the participants today. They have attended across the globe and attending this event for making it a big success. Thankful to all our partners for their commitment and their support that they have been providing to the Gender Equality Summit in the past 4 years. I must say, without your support, the Gender Equality Summit would have not been the success and the scale that we have reached today. It really shows your commitment towards this cause. Finally, I would like to place my hearty thanks to the entire GCNI team, our officiating Executive Director, Mr. Asim Kumar, my entire team of the program, the interns who are really working day and night to make this summit extremely successful, the core committee members of the Gender Equality Summit who made this agenda a very powerful of integrating the gender and the climate together. So thank you very much for all your support. Today, the spirit of targeting the most prudent issues of our times continue, and we look forward to your positive and meaningful engagements in the future as well. I'm sure that we at Global Compact Network India will continue to get significant provision from diverse groups in the future as well. I hope the summit has provided and motivated us enough to contribute to moving our global society back from the brink. Let's work together in a powerful way to achieve the SDG 5 and SDG 13, the most crucial agenda that 2030 has to be deliberated on, because the race to equality is a race to always do climate action. So both these integration is a very powerful way that this Gender Equality Summit has provided. Let's endeavor to do more, strengthening the institution of value system, divinity, social building, and infinite potentialities of inclusive and a sustainable world. Step by step, we shall overcome the disparity. It's not easy, I would say, but it's not impossible either. With this, I conclude it, and thank you very much for attending the summit and making it a huge success. Thank you very much. Over to you, Vandana.
Thank you so much, Tamanna, for a fantastic vote of thanks. And really, I think just summing everything up beautifully, I will leave everyone with 3 thoughts that have really come out over the 2 days. The first is walk the talk and make it short, i.e., let's not do any more talking. Let's do the walking. Let's make this happen. The second is involve to solve. Let's get gender absolutely at the heart of all the decisions that are being made. And finally, it may take a village to raise a child, but it takes women to build that village. Let's make sure we're giving them all the support. We owe this to ourselves and to future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we look forward to seeing you at the 6th Gender Equality Summit next year. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Vandana, and I want to say thank you and 3 cheers for Tamanna, our super hero, as I call them, taking up this challenge in challenging circumstances. That's what makes solid people. You've proven that you can do it. Thank you so much to you and the entire team at Global Compact Network India. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and bye-bye, everybody.